Hello from Yosu, South Korea. This is Mike. I'm sorry if my camera's a little shaky. For some reason, the stand that my computer's on is kind of shaking. Also, my attire. I'm getting ready to meet some hiking buddies of mine, and we hike every Sunday. I wanted to discuss the unit plan, this whole module on unit planning. So I'm just going to go through the list of Teach Now questions. The first question was, how effective would you rate initial planning of the units? Well, I want to talk about first of all, how we plan a unit at my school. So I teach in the Korean public school education system, and at my middle school, we teach through the textbook is a series of textbooks. And the way the textbook is set up is, okay, students go to their classes, English classes, 3 times a week. They have 2 classes with the Korean teacher, and then they have a class with me. My sole focus is conversation and speaking skills, and then the classes with the 2 classes with the Korean teachers is focused on grammar. Now, the reason why the Korean government brings in conversation native speakers like me is to focus on speaking, because most Koreans, again, the Korean education system is a Confucian rote memorization system that's slowly changing. Most students just memorize grammar, for the TOEIC English exam that they take, and that's it. They can't formulate sentences, they can't ask basic things for where's the restroom. However, that's changed a lot in the last 5 years, and I actually have a lot of students who I consider pretty fluent in English because they attend Hagwons, which are like private academies after school. So that's just kind of a setup how it is. So the textbook that we use is from a list of government mandated textbooks. I use the Joanna Haas series called Middle School English, and basically there already is, in English too, I'm lucky, there already is a unit lesson plan. So what I do is I put in the CD-ROM into my computer, I print out, the whole unit lesson plan, and from there I tweak and modify a lot. So I upload it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then I have kind of my ideas. So I know that I always have to teach from the textbook. So the textbook has interactive software that we use with the smartboard. But I always like to do 2 things. I like to add a cultural nugget, personalize the lesson, and I try to incorporate like a fun activity into the lesson because textbooks get pretty dry. So I'm very fortunate that I have I sort of already have the unit planning outline done for me. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The outline's done for me. However, I go in and personalize it and make it my own. Now, I know that that's not always going to be how it is, especially when I do officially get my own classroom, because I'm still considered an assistant teacher. But as long as I teach English in the Korean school system, I do have to use their lesson plan. And everyone in the English department, there's 4 of us, 3 Korean teachers and me, we all follow the same lesson plan, so we all know where we're at. But again, lesson planning is so important because it's the map of the unit. You need to know where you're going. You can't just go to a destination without a map. What led to revisions in the lesson plans? Time restraints. Time. I'm a talker and I explain. I like my students to understand. And sometimes I set lofty goals and I overplan. That's the thing with planning. I write, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. When realistically, by the time students come in, we get settled, we do a little bit of reviewing, and then realize, oh, don't have time for that. So that's the biggest revision in my lesson plans. The second biggest revision was I did an activity. The unit is over going to the movies. So basically, it's how to go to a movie box office window, ask for tickets, ask for times, and it's also about movies themselves, how to discuss the genre of movies and what students like. So one of the activities that I planned was for students to write, persuasive essay on what their favorite movie is. Now, I have to modify that because I teach 2 levels of classes, level A and level B. A are my advanced students, so they can for sure do that. They can formulate sentences. There's a few grammar errors, but they can express their opinions. However, my lower level classes um, on Fridays and Mondays, my level B classes, they are not able to do that. So I kind of tweaked it to where what they're going to do is just give me a movie poster. I'm going to pass out construction paper. We have markers and colored pencils. They're going to create a movie, and then up on the smart board, I'm going to have a list of things that I want. Movie name in English, the rating, and they have to write a few adjectives to describe the movie, why they like it. So there still is English language involved in the project, but to capture their minds and to make them a little bit more excited about it, I have to make it a movie poster, because for them to sit down and write a paper, it's not going to happen. What insights did you gain from the lesson planning process in teaching a lesson? Well, lessons definitely go smoother when you have a lesson plan, because you always have the schedule in the back of your mind. So you're like, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. So you know the end goal. I feel like sometimes if you don't have a lesson plan, you're flying blind. Now, there are times as teachers we don't always have a lessons plan, and I'm guilty of that, but most of the time I try to have a clear, concise lesson plan, because it helps me as well as it helps the students, so I can make sure I'm touching all the points that need to be touched. And students, are learning what needs to be learned. But again, each lesson has an objective that's clear that I have to teach. That's part of the textbook curriculum. What parts emerged as critical to its implementation? Everything. Everything. 21st century skills. That's something that I never focused on till before Teach Now. And the Teach Now template has showed me how I need to focus on that and how it's just absolutely essential. And now it does make me think deeper, like, oh, what are the students getting out of this? How can I modify or tweak it so my students can learn about this or learn about that? So that is something that I've started to do from Teach Now, is to use the 21st century learning methods. How did the planning process, help you determine how you would know whether students were meeting the objectives? Well, I sort of already know this anyway, because every time I meet with my students, I always have a mini sort of review at the beginning. We like to do, I call it sudden death, but some of the readings call it never ending question. But we have a tennis ball, we toss back and forth over the dialogue. So I always sort of have an idea of where my students are. And this particular unit focuses on movies. My students love movies. Love them, love them, love them. In fact, every Monday they come in and tell me what they saw. They literally go to the movies all the time. So I always have an idea where they're at, just from constant engaging them in conversation, from doing review games. And we always do, every single class period, we always do a written whiteboard activity. So that allows me and the co-teacher to walk around and see where the students are at. Developing an understanding of the content. For my level A classes, this is easy. For my level B classes, it's extremely difficult, because I tend to over-explain, because I feel, and I have to have my co-teacher translate a lot, because the level B students are a little bit different. They are moving on to a technical high school, and they don't really have an interest in learning English, whereas my level A's are all going to Korean universities where essential is a must, so they're vested in learning. My lower level students, sadly, I have a few that try hard, but they are in their third year of middle school, getting ready to go to high school, and they've lost the zeal for English. So I try to make it as fun as possible, but it's always difficult with the level B classes, because I try to gauge them and do fun activities, and sometimes they go really well, sometimes they don't. Really, with level B students, the only way for me to see if they've grasped the material is through, the summative assessment, the testing that they do at the end of each semester, like midterms and finals. That's the only way for me to see. I always do review games with them 2 weeks before their tests, and that gives me an idea, but it's not as deep understanding as I would like. How did the planning process, how to go for predicting student engagement, skill attainment, Again, it's basically what I just said. I sort of know in my head what classes are really going to grasp the material and run with it, and which ones are going to struggle. And for my level B classes that I teach Monday and Friday, that requires a lot of differentiated instruction, more so than my regular classes. And truthfully, going into an activity with them, I never know if it's going to succeed or I never know if it's going to fail. I always have high expectations, which I have to. It's important to have high expectations for your students, but then a lot of times I feel a little bit let down, like they didn't grasp it. What did I do wrong? What could have done better? And then, I go to my co-teacher and I try to solicit feedback from her, and she's like, oh, the students just, they don't grasp English like the other classes. It's not your fault, which doesn't make me feel better after a lesson that wasn't, as good as I wanted it to be. But being able to clearly write out each objective and what I expected was nice, because having it in writing, I can see, what do my students need to know? What do I need to teach them to engage them? And then it's like a checklist. Oh, they got it, they got it, they got it. So definitely, I would say lesson planning is absolutely necessary. It makes the lessons go smoother. It lets me know what I need to present and where my students are at with the material. So I'm sorry if I've rambled on. I tend to ramble, but that is my thoughts on the unit. Thank you.